And welcome back. Today we are answering the long asked questions. As Magic the Gathering players buying packs, are we getting screwed? I'm Levi.
And I'm Joe.
And this is the Thought Vessel. Welcome to the show. Unfortunately, because of life events, Jacoby will not be joining us on this episode, so we are going to be just pressing on without him. We have a lot of data to go through and a lot of information to cover, so I'm very excited to jump in. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely fine. We're both pretty much back from Vegas. Not Vegas, Atlanta. What am I?
They
We're
all
both,
blend together. It's all good.
we're back from Atlanta. Both Levi and myself were there, though we didn't really see each other. We weren't in the same room. We kind
No.
of did our own thing.
It was a weird convention for me because like every day was something very, very different. Obviously, Joe, you were doing jamming games, hanging out with your content creators you don't get to see all the time since you're not living in the same city. But for me, this was my wife's first opportunity to go to a convention, not just MagicCon, just a convention at all. That was something we kind of wanted to put on a bucket list, is have her get a chance to experience it. She went to this one, and it was the first day that we were there on Friday. We did the Arcades Arcade, and we kind of walked around, played a couple games of Commander, and did game nights live, and just kind of all the traditional Magic things without trying to avoid as much lines as possible. Although obviously with a convention, there's going to be some lines. The second day for me, I love my autographs. So I was getting a lot of that done. And then third day, we actually dipped out pretty early to actually go to the Atlanta Falcons game next door because I'm wanting to go to all the different NFL stadiums. That was a chance to knock one off my bucket list.
Yeah, fair enough. I had 4 people who it was also their first time at MagicCon, and I was able to, with the help of my parents, get a room that they did not have to pay for the entire weekend. I also had my car with me because I had to bring my friend Dylan of Dylan the Cripple fame online to and from the convention without necessarily needing to order Ubers. I can say, though, that the most expensive thing that I purchased that entire weekend was parking. The collective of parking in Atlanta, I swear I reached to $300 just in parking alone.
It was absolutely insane, some of the parking and things like that. So it's one of those that if you get to a hotel, you may want to just try to Uber places. You're going to end up having a cheaper time with that. But overall, out of 10, did you have a good time?
Oh, yeah, 100%. One of the other things outside of just meeting a lot of the content creators that I play with online and just miss them all so dearly, I also got to network with Wizards employees as well as do LobbyCon in the Omni. One of the things that I've been telling with a whole lot of people is that, yeah, I was just in the Omni on the Skybridge connecting the two towers of the Omni, partying with Iffy Wadiway.
Definitely really exciting to have that experience. For me, it was probably a solid 8 or 9 out of 10. I think with some conventions, there is a little bit of a diminishing return. This was probably the first time that I've been to a convention since kind of consistently getting on the guest stream kind of schedule of being on a lot of different people's streams. So getting a chance to kind of see them in person after playing on multiple times was kind of cool to see, get that connection. Without further ado, the title of this episode is not talking about the convention that we're actually going to be diving in here and going over the prices of cards and kind of the hit rates and overall just looking at Wizards has increased prices on packs. Is it justified? What's going on with that? Joe.
So yeah, a lot of this came through just financials of the Spider-Man set. So it got me thinking, what is the actual value percentage if you're just cracking a pack and if you're just trying to do the normal, what amount of cards in that versus the card pool that you are given to work with provides the most amount of value?
And we should note here, we're only looking at your traditional play booster. So we're not factoring in collector booster with this amount of data here.
This is, in fact, a episode not necessarily for the whales. One thing to put up front is that we're doing an asterisk because I did separate from the last 2 years the top best for value of packs and top worst. Spider-Man is way too new. Based off of the data, it should be in the best value packs, bar none. But because it's still new and its value is still going to be fluctuating because, as we all know, markets like to fluctuate and it's really hard to really pin it down a month after it's been released.
With a lot of these cards too, we're getting a constant stream of supply when people are opening more packs trying to get those $15,000 soul stones and things like that. But we're also getting more people that are playing with some of these cards and finding out how important or powerful some of these things are. We're starting to see increases on prices. Spider Sense, which is a fantastic kind of counter spell that's just seeing a little bit of CDH in some other spaces as well. I've got a couple in some of the decks that I've recently been putting together. But as it goes on, the volatility should go down on Spider-Man. But as it stands right now, it's at a phenomenal situation. Joe, why don't you explain a little bit about the value rate that you're referring to?
All of the numbers that I calculated were based off of TCG player pricing. This is in not only the play booster, but the cards themselves, because as far as Scryfall's monetary Boolean search, it uses a lot of TCG player pricing. That being said, we do not stand people who like to break up unions, and especially against those union peoples.
We are generally anti-union busting.
Yes. The market data is still very, very useful, and especially when trying to calculate in this kind of economy. What we did, or specifically what I did, is that I took the MSRP of the packs because Wizards has very graciously started doing MSRP again, also taking the median pack price that is being sold by different stores across the United States, and we compare and contrast those numbers. Then, after all of that, we will then take the card pool that you could have that is above the median pack price, because that's the one that's you're going to be typically paying for at a store. And then however many cards are above that number, dividing it by the actual card pool of a play booster. And that is when we get our value percentage. And that is the percentage of if you open a booster pack, that is the likely percentage of that pack to provide you one of those cards above the pack median price.
Couple things to note here with that is we're going to also have this Google Sheet shared in our show notes here. So if you wanted to take a look at this data for yourselves, feel free to do so. A couple of the big things we see here is the value rate at Final Fantasy at 10.31%. Spider-Man, of course, is at 12.15%. A big thing that I found was interesting was for the year of 2025, the value percentage is actually going in a chronological order. You have Innistrad Remaster having the worst value so far at 2.92%.
Of the
Either
past
Drift
2 years, too.
of the past 2 years, incredibly low value for what you're getting, which when you look back on some of the Innistrad sets, there isn't a whole lot of killer value cards. And the ones that were at a high value, like Craterhoof Behemoth and Snapcaster Mage, got reprints elsewhere. That kind of diluted the market a little bit there. Either Drift was next with 6.17, Tarkir Dragonstorm at 6.62, Final Fantasy at 10.31. I think a little bit of an asterisk, just the median price for Final Fantasy packs is up to $10.04. So that is kind of pushing the goalpost a little bit for us. But
Not
then,
by much. That's the crazy bit.
the Edge of Eternities was 11.92%. That was a set I was a little skeptical on when it first came out, but I think it's one of those that as we got more of these cards in the wild and had a chance to really experience them, there was a lot of value and a lot of fun from that set. I think the science fiction was a little weird and a little hard for people to get used to, but I think it might end up being one of my favorite sets of the year. And then, of course, we had Spider-Man at the top right now. Will it stay there? We don't know. But I think it's just really going to depend on where some of these prices end up.
Especially since a lot of those card designs that are currently at that top, you can even see it in the spreadsheet if you're looking at it while listening to this. A lot of the full card pool for Spider-Man, a lot of those numbers are because of repeat cards that are very expensive, such as the Spectacular Spider-Man, which had multiple versions. So that certainly can dilute that pool. Hence why, if you also look at the just normal cards, it drops down to just 10 cards of just the normal version of said card being the entire card pool of just the normal cards. And that's 10 out of 193, I believe.
We also had some alternate arts and things like that, but there was also a ton of valuable cards from Spider-Man that were collector booster only that we're not even factoring into this as of right now. Kind of looking at the data here as well, I think some theories that we can pull from this data as we've been going on that we obviously would have to look into the data a bit deeper for the validity, but I think that starting with kind of Final Fantasy a little bit, maybe a little bit of Darkish Dragonstorm, we've had kind of a more of an inflow of scalper culture coming over from Pokemon, where we're having a lot more people buying just for the sake of opening packs and trying to get something more than what their pack is worth to sell. That's also driving the prices up a little bit. We're seeing once we hit to the Final Fantasy and beyond, we're getting 10%, 11%, 12%. So these are the highest that we're seeing for the most part, with the exception of 2024 that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But scalper prices, they're not necessarily best for the average player, but as far as like making sales and having Wizards of the Coast have a successful product that they can continue to do, that seems to be helping.
Even with the Final Fantasy, even with the scalping pricing and a medium pack price for Final Fantasy being at $10.04, which I checked today, and that's why there is a nice little date on all of these, because of course, prices are going to change, markets fluctuate. But even with that $10.04, you can even see it on the chart. There was 30 cards just in the normal pool that you could just bring out between just normal Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy Across Time. The normal pool of Final Fantasy Across Time, that's just going to be in that singular slot. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. But that's still 30 cards out of, I believe it was 302 for the normal set and about 80 for Final Fantasy Across Time. Those numbers I don't have off the top of my head. Those I did not put into the sheet. Probably should have.
I think looking back at this, we're going to see Wizards of the Coast having the multi-set deal with Marvel and not having the multi-set with Final Fantasy as one of the biggest fumbles that Wizards of the Coast has ever had.
Probably wouldn't say that much, but multi-set with Final Fantasy likely would have been a little bit better. And we are at least getting a little bit more coming this holiday season, which, oh boy, that was also revealed at Atlanta. The Chocobo track foil, those cards are going to be expensive.
That Relentless Vivi or whatever it is, that instant sorcery that makes a black wizard, that one looks really awesome.
But those are different financial things and fanboy things for a different time.
Looking at this as well, it's interesting to me to see some of the prices of MSRP versus the medium pack price. We're seeing that with a lot of the main sets, Edge of Eternities is still holding around the same price of MSRP to medium pack price, where it's about 50 cents more than it originally was. But the rest of the universes within sets are actually selling for less than their MSRP. So you're getting either Drift is selling for $4.12 per pack, and you're getting Tarkir Dragon Store selling at $5.20 per pack instead of the $5.49 MSRP. So when a lot of people are making these critiques of doing more universes beyond or universes within, the proof is kind of in the pudding here that people just simply aren't buying that universes within product.
And part of that could also be what a lot of people did say is that given the fact that they have contractual obligations to these companies and wanting to make sure that the cards that they're producing are good. I mean, look at VV and Standard. Obviously, VV was extremely pushed. And just the fact that it is a very beloved character within Final Fantasy, it can be hard to ban it out of Standard versus in-universe sets. They're probably being a little bit more careful with their in-universe sets to not necessarily do something that broken.
Now, typically, this is going to be very interesting as we go, because typically you get like a kind of a pullback set with the standard rotation where there's just like one set in every like 3 sets or so that's just less powerful than the rest. And usually they'll like crank up the flavor. So you had kind of your Strixhavens and your Icorias and stuff like that, where like the cards were okay, but maybe they're fun mechanics than like actually like competitive or powerful kind of things. But now that we're going to be getting 7 sets next year, how is that going to look? Are we ever going to have the pullback set? Is that going to be on The Hobbit? I don't think so.
That one's going to be very difficult to figure out. I think Reality Fracture might be where they do the pullback, since that is still not necessarily defined on what they're actually doing with that set. I did like the key art where Chandra is actually Indian. We're actually making Chandra the race that she is supposed to technically be if the plane is supposed to be a facsimile of India.
And that's something that I'm kind of interested in with that particular set, because I think that one of the things that we're not really addressing down the line is we're producing a lot of these cards that have their own IPs and are going to be incredibly difficult to logistically reprint down the line. The One Ring's price is getting out of control. VV is very, very hard to get a functional reprint done. Fortunately, it's a 2-color commander, so the market's a little bit more diluted because it can't go in every single deck, but you're getting a lot more of these cards. If you do like 5 years of this, you're going to have a really hard time reprinting these things if you're not going back to Final Fantasy or something like that.
Now, I think the other argument you can make, at least for the reprint, that's probably why they made a lot of these into standard, because then you at least have 3 years to get a lot of these out into the wild as possible. And especially if a new card from an older set becomes much more relevant, because R&D likes to make those sleeper cards for future sets. That being said, we do still see that it's really hard to get our hands on some Final Fantasy.
Mhm.
And part of that is because of a printing issue that they talked about, that they wouldn't have had more prints of it until Q4. So hopefully, because it is a standard set, we will at least see that market increase and increase. While it will drive the value of the packs down, we can only hope that the actual price of the packs comes down with it.
I think at this point, most people have already kind of gotten what they want from this set. So I'm just wondering if it's a little too late, where the market's kind of already where it's going to be. And I feel like you might be better suited just to push forward. At some point down the line, they're going to have to figure out how to reprint some of these things in a logistical way. It might be like a universe within skinned set, kind of like we're seeing on Arena right now with Spider-Man,
Or they
where
might even just update their contracts with those companies.
they very well could. I'll be very curious to see where this goes. And at the rate that they're putting out these IPs, you're going to run out of the popular ones at some point. It's just very interesting to see how this all comes through. And I'm very excited for the future. But let's look back a little bit farther towards 2024 and the ones previously. Obviously, we didn't have as much information as far as MSRP at that point
Mhm.
because Wizards wasn't doing it. But as far as the hit rates go, Ravnica Remastered was at 12.13%, which we'll talk about that one in a second. Modern Horizons 3, as one might expect, is at 11.32%.
Mhm.
Murders at Karlov Manor, surprisingly, is at 9.72%. This would be the fourth best set this year, right behind Final Fantasy and Edge of Eternity and Spider-Man. Outlaws Thunder Junction, a little bit of a disappointing 5.35.
Specifically, we did our pre-talk before the show, and how when I collated all of this data, there were so many people that sort of like, Murders of Karlov Manor, that set sucks. There's no value in it. And then I've at least heard more praise put onto Thunder Junction. My God, the value of that being so drastically changed between those two is bonkers. It is a 4% change in value.
Looking at that too, like I'm a big Ravnica guy. I loved going to Karlov Manor to kind of go back to Ravnica, even if it was kind of weird that everybody was a detective all of a sudden. But I still had a good time with it. There's some good cards. Voya came out of Karlov Manor and everything like that. But Thunder Junction had some really neat stuff as well. But obviously, the price is just not where you want to be. I want to talk about Assassin's Creed here for a bit. It got the aftermath treatment. So it had like very, very small packs,
Mhm.
very small, wasn't draftable. It was kind of we just need to get these singles out there to extend in this IP. But there was a lot of really cool cards coming out of Assassin's Creed.
Which, funny enough, you can scroll to the end of that chart and it will show you what the low end and high end cards are, because I also took that into account. And you will see that the low end, a sort of light and shadow, and the high end is a sort of feast and famine. It's actually really funny that the value in that set were just the reprints.
Bookend in the swords. Even then, I know that they're one of the 5 mana Ezio was seeing a lot of play in a dual commander for a while, and there was just a lot of really neat historic type spells and permanents in that set that were really cool to see. Bloomburrow, I think, was a massive hit at the time at 9.66%. Duskmourn was at 9.55. In Foundations was a little bit disappointing here at 8.89, even though that was a set that I thought was a really good set that year.
Specifically with Bloomborough in the CDH community, a lot of people have just said that every good card from 2024 came out of Bloomborough. We got so many good
Hmm.
things that just CDH loves, because even if you're just looking at the top two that come up the most, you have Mockingbird, which is just a
Hmm.
very decent clone. Even if you're not really pumping mana to copy a big thing like you would with some of the 2-drop clones, you also can just copy a Esper Sentinel if you needed to, an Orcish Bowmasters if you needed to. And the same thing with Valley Flood Collar, and how just that has enabled a lot more of
Oh,
the
yeah.
win on other people's turns. Bloomborough was the set that people looked at and was like, actually, this might have been a good CDH set too.
I mean, some people do have some criticisms that that kind of created a lot of stalemate situations because everyone's playing on everyone else's turns. But as far as just getting things that CDH players are going to like, Bloomborough did a fantastic job, which is, it's weird seeing so many weapons of mass destruction come out of a set about adorable little bunnies and lizards and
Legitimately,
all
absolutely
the
wild.
all the woodland critters. Kind of reminds me of that the South Park Christmas special,
Woodland Critter Christmas.
Woodland Critter Christmas.
Foundations, I also can understand about its value because it's supposed to be a 5-year long standard set. It shouldn't have had anything that was necessarily going to be that much of a problem. But at the same time, we did see some new designs, some that were sought after, even some sought after reprints. It was actually really interesting to see that Omniscience was the low end value for the set.
There is some cards that surprisingly do fly underneath the radar. But overall, looking at the list as a whole, what was the one data point that surprised you the most?
I think it was just the disparity between the MSRP and the median pack price. Because outside of Final Fantasy and Aether Drift, where we have that information, we don't really see that much of a change. 50 cents typically at the most. We also see that Innistrad Remaster, even with that value being abysmal, the median pack price is still pretty much sticking around MSRP.
That's very fair. And that's a good sign to see for local game stores and
Mm.
places that are selling sealed products, where if you're buying these things, you can buy in confidence for the most part that they're going to hold up in value as you're holding this inventory. At some point, someone's going to want to do a Tarkir Dragon Storm draft or something, or a Chaos draft, and you can still sell these packs because you have to order in advance, as we learned from Reversal Wizard
Mhm.
whenever we had that episode. Fantastic episode. Definitely check that one out if you
Mhm.
haven't already. Having some stability with the pack prices, even if it's just a little bit of variance, is going to be helpful in the long run.
The other thing that really shocked me was just how many of the actual value cards came out of Thunder Junction. Because you can even see down in the chart that out of the main set, there was only 4 cards, 4 of the
Yeah.
normal cards that were just not above the actual pack price. Even when we expanded that to all of the cards in the normal pool, that only increased to 5.
And for me, it's kind of funny because, kind of going back to the South Park references here, it's almost like we were eating member berries, where we've got this fond memory of Outlaws Thunder Junction, getting a chance to play some of this in sealed and draft and thinking like, oh, this is a lot of fun. There's a lot of power here. I guess when it comes to desert landfall typal stuff, it just doesn't quite hold the monetary value as something from Final Fantasy would.
Well, not only that, you also just had a lot of the mount mechanics, which were hit and miss. They definitely got a lot more enabled by going to Duskmorn with survivors.
That's a fantastic point. When you look at the worst value set from this year and last year, both of them had to do with crewing a artifact or creature type thing for value. So you had the vehicle set, which was Aether Drift, and you had the mount set that was Thunder Junction. And then it was a little bit of an outlier of this theory. Here we have Edge of Eternities with the stations, but that was kind of its own thing.
And even then, Edge of Eternities has just a lot of fun mechanics that have just been bangers, especially with Warp, because at
Mhm.
least Levi and I are on 2 different things with Warp, because Mono Red Tanook,
Mhm.
I loved that design and just like cheating out big things for like 3. Whereas because you're our Blink player, you're just like, oh, hey, here's a Warp. And then Blink, haha, I made it cheaper.
Warp's probably the best thing to happen to Blink in a long time. We're even seeing some of these warp cards take off with the new Eddie Brock Venom, where they just warp in a big creature, sack it, draw a bunch of cards, get something else. It's a busted mechanic. It's ripe to exploit, but it's not necessarily a straight line. This is how you do it every time kind of a mechanic. It gives you a lot of room to think and theory craft. And that's what you should really want from mechanics. A little bit of a spoiler here. That might be the best set of 2025 for me, depending on guess what Avatar does.
And especially because, at least in the Edge of Eternities packs, you could also get an Ancient Tomb. And that also really drove it up. And that's why you can see that if you're trying to get the biggest hit of that set, you are going to get an Ancient Tomb. That is going to be the hit.
The Galaxy foils in and of itself, just as a foiling type, gorgeous.
Which unfortunately, you can't get Galaxy Foil in the Play Booster. That's only the collector.
Yeah, but I still want to shout it out. It's so cool.
I know. I did have to remove a lot of the double foils because when you are trying to look for the amounts of cards in sets, sometimes they include the surge foils within the actual main body instead of capping it at the end. It made it real difficult sometimes.
It can be rough. It definitely can.
Especially the serialized. It was also really weird with the head.
Yeah, serialized is its own thing. And we'll kind of talk about Ravnica Remastered here. So if we were to look at Ravnica Remastered on a hit rate perspective of like the cards available, thank goodness that the serialized cards were not in regular boosters, because that would have been a whole different thing, because that set was loaded down with serialized cards. Everything in that set had a serialized version.
And that's just outside of the actual card pool that it already had, which was really good.
That set kind of set the tone early on. Wizards like, okay, we need to pull back on the serialized thing because we're going to destroy the entire market of these things if we keep doing it at this rate. You're seeing little handfuls of stuff. I was genuinely surprised to see the Soulstone not get a serialized printing. That just looked like a serialized card to me. So I was very intrigued to see it not get that.
I think the main reason why they didn't do that is because the One Ring, as much as it really drove packs, people hated that. And if you're going to be doing the Soulstone, you would have to do it the same way as you did the One Ring, unless you're bringing in multiverse shenanigans immediately outside of literally Spider-Verse. You would have had to only do a 1-of-1 Soulstone.
I think you probably could have done like 6. You could have done a 6x6, 36 in total, whenever you're all done with it. But I think you still had the Thanos version and you had the other version. Like there was enough like cool printings out there that I feel like you could have made the super special one if you really wanted to.
It is definitely fair. We can at least do what I did, which is take what is the best value packs and the worst value packs. We will, in fact, start with the worst value packs. And these are the packs you probably just want to automatically look at buying singles for. Technically, you want to buy singles for all of these because the percentages are that low that you are literally buying a lottery ticket at that point.
Just buy singles. At the end of the day, if there's 3 cards you want, just find a way to get those 3 cards.
We will start from the least worst to the most worst. Coming at number 5, we have Foundations at 8.89%, Tarkir Dragonstorm at 6.62%, Aether Drift at 6.17%, Outlaws of Thunder Junction at 5.35%, and our worst pack value is Innistrad Remastered, 2.92%.
That number is so low to me. It really blows my mind. Innistrad didn't have that many expensive cards that didn't already get reprints as it was. Sub 3% is crazy to me.
And a lot of that is because the big hits, the movie posters and some of the full border, all of those are in the collector boosters. Wizards has only been putting the extended framing of cards in collector boosters as well. That's why some of these the play boosters aren't getting as much value either. A lot of these are being pushed to the collector boosters.
And as far as the extended art, the odds of a Wizards of the Coast employee listening to this is very slim. But if there is one, the extended arts are not that cool. We don't need to have that just be a collector booster exclusive. I understand you stretched it a little bit. It's kind of like when you went to the widescreen DVD from the full screen. It's just not that special where it needs to be in a collector booster. Don't have to do it.
You really don't. It's the same thing with art cards. The art cards they finally removed from play boosters and are only doing that in collector boosters, which is, you didn't need to take that away from play boosters. You really didn't.
I don't even know what to do with them at this point. I just have a decent chunk of them. I used to try to collect all of them as they came out, but then they got a little bit more priced in value. And I'm like, okay, we're just done with that collection. Let's talk about the top 5 highest values.
Again, going from the worst best to the best best.
That's how we say it. Worst best. Love it.
Yeah, correct. Bloomborough is at number 5 at 9.66%. Final Fantasy at number 4 at 10.31%. Modern Horizons 3 at 11.32%. Edge of Eternities at 11.92%. Ravnica Remastered at 12.13%. Just remember, we were not adding Spider-Man to that because it is too new.
We're just hating on it a little bit. It's fine. As it stands right now, totally understandable with Spider-Man. But even with the rates being above 10% for a lot of these, which is good, 1 in 10, you get your money back kind of a thing. That's not super good odds for me. Like if I was going to go buy a lottery ticket and it's like, hey, you're going to spend $6, $7 in this lottery ticket and then 1 in 10 chance you get your money back, I'm probably not doing that. I would rather just spend the $25, $30 to get the card I want than to try to go pull it at this point.
Yeah, and especially given the fact that there are so many cards that are just sub of these packs. As somebody who loves opening booster packs, I get it. I typically buy myself a box because I just want to have that nice little start of a collection of that set. But if I open that box and I didn't get a specific thing, I am not going to go and get another box. I am going to just buy the card that I wanted to get.
It really just depends on your situation. For me, I'm single sniping all the way. As soon as the set comes out, I'll just look over the cards that I might want from the new set. Usually ends up being less than a box itself, if I'm being honest, just because like I'm a little bit more picky with the individual cards I want. And then as we go along, there might be like a couple $2 cards here and there I need to pick up, but it's nothing that I'm really sweating about at that point. Moral of the story, this is great information to have. Thank you so much, Joe, for putting this all together. Singles are definitely going to be the way to go. It does answer the question, like, are we getting screwed with the value? And as it stands right now, I don't see that being the case. We're paying more, but the value in the hit rate is showing to be where it's supposed to be.
And technically, we're not even paying that much more in the main Magic sets. Even if their value rates are lower, they are still decent and below MSRP, where you probably want.
And just wrapping up here, remember that FOMO is going to be a real thing. Not everything that's put out there is something that you have to tackle and buy right away. You can wait on these things. There's no pressure. There's no rush. Do whatever is smart for you and your family as far as the financial decisions go. I think it's a wrap here. Joe, do you have any final comments?
Buy singles. I know that wasn't the lesson that you probably wanted to hear, but we reaffirmed that buying singles is still the best.
Absolutely. And of course, I've been Levi.
And I'm Joe.
And this has been the Thought Vessel. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Keep buying singles. All these
Buy the
packs.
singles.
All these packs.